Okay, yeah, my name is Kaspars Sterns. I'm coming from Latvia. I'm 37. I look younger than I am old, and that's because I'm coming from north of Europe, yeah, from east-north, from Latvia. And I'm married for almost 13 years, and I have 3 boys. One is 8-year-old, one is 6-year-old, and one is 2-year-old. So that's my first church. That's my first leadership development at my home. I have 3 great leaders. I need to invest. I need to help them to grow as leaders. I'm also a church planter. I'm planting church in Latvia, in one of our capital cities suburbs. Latvia is, comparing to you, it's a small country. It's about 2 million people. And half of the population lives in Riga, in our capital city. So very interesting country. And also I've been doing ministry already like 15 years, even maybe more. And actually when I was 15 years old, I felt God is calling me to be a pastor. And I felt like it's the best thing what you can do. I didn't grow up in Christian family, but I had a good pastor who was good role model for me. And that's why I wanted to be like him. I wanted to do what he was doing. And I was really, it was very special for me. So since that, I was not changing my mind. Since that, I was going to that direction, going to study in theological seminary, starting to work in one of the biggest Baptist churches in Latvia. And I still enjoy that, even though it's not always easy and it's challenging and there are a lot of struggles as well. So I'm church planter, but one of the things what I'm also doing, I'm also working with the Baptist Union in Latvia. And we are right now 92 Baptist churches in Latvia, more than 6,000 people, members. And 10 years ago, our situation in Latvia in terms of Baptist denomination in Latvia was not very positive and optimistic. We were not doing church planting at all. We were many churches who were dying and going down the numbers, and we were really struggling with leaders. We had good, great leaders, but some of them got old. And some of them got sooner or later got to retired. And we really start to question what to do, how to change the dying denomination for the church planting and church renewal movement. So we start to cast the vision. We want to plant 100 new churches in Latvia. And for us, for many people in the beginning, it was quite crazy dream. Because they, guys, are you friends with your brain, you know? But why we put 100 churches? It's not like, it's like we will plant 100 churches and then we are done. No, let's do something different. It's really behind that, it's a church planting movement. We want to see churches who are planting churches, who are planting churches. And we wanted to develop the vision, which actually requires faith. Because if we would put like, we want to plant 20 churches, actually you can quite humanly do that yourself. But if you put that number, you realize you need to have faith. You would actually need God to make happen this vision. Because us as a humans with limited resources, with no leaders, with no church planting experience, it's quite impossible for us as a man to do that. So that's why this vision was very important for us to cast. And throughout that, we start to actually, with that vision, we start to recruit new leaders and train and change the way how we recruit those leaders and how we train them. So we developed different strategies and structures. We changed the school where we train our pastors. So we developed a different school and different approach how we train them. We call it Baltic Pastoral Institute, or BPI. We developed also a program to recruit future leaders. We call it draft camps. Well, basically it's for teenager boys who are still playing phones in their churches, like 14, 15, but we want actually them to cast the vision that God wants you one day to plant church or lead in a ministry. And we also develop mentoring. And I'm part of all that, and I'm not the only one who is doing that, but I'm part of that, and I really enjoy that. But what we realized, to fulfill that vision, it requires definitely Holy Spirit, but it also requires good people. It requires leaders. Everything starts with leaders. We know that. Everything starts with leaders. We need to multiply new leaders who multiply new leaders. And we probably know great stories about like great companies, great churches where there are great leaders. And suddenly something happens with those leaders. And they were not very strong in reproducing new leaders. So what happens with those companies? They collapse. Like there's in Latvia, there's one great company who has a great restaurant. And that the owner of that company is really fanatic. It's like his baby. But what some of the people are saying that there's no heritage for that leadership. Because he doesn't have anybody who can follow him after maybe he will pass away or he will retire. So some people already predict that this company probably will collapse after he will finish his leadership position. And even though we sometimes feel like, yes, but I'm good leader. I'm like Jaromir Jagr, who can, in the 50s still play hockey, And there are some leaders who feel like that, I can be leader, I don't know how many years. And we don't or sometimes think like 3 steps ahead. So do I have somebody who is following me, who can also gather people around him and who can start to lead others? I remember myself, when I was a teenager and I felt like I'm a pretty cool guy and I'm a good leader. And I was starting in my town youth ministry. And I remember that it went well. It was good. And I could attract some good young people around me. But then I moved to different city to study. And I remember that after that, nothing continued. Why? Because I didn't produce new leaders. It was really around my personality. And that was it. And that's why we need to think about. And the question is, for you probably now sitting down, you understand? Yes, I understand. That's reality. You need to have new leaders. If you want long run, if you want that your ministry, if your church plant lasts long and start to reproduce even. The question for all of us is, where to get those leaders? How to recruit those leaders? And I'm pretty sure that in your ministry, you don't have people who are standing up, yes, I'm ready to lead. Yes, I feel like I'm leader. If you have such a people, you need to run away from them, probably, because they are not yet ready. Those who are lowest doesn't mean that they are the best people sometimes. And the question is also how we develop those leaders, how we help them to grow, to mature as leaders. And I just want to share my life experience. I have a short life, and my experience is not very huge, and I'm very sure that you also have a lot of good examples and learning points what you can learn from your experience in a leadership development. But I will share from my experience what I learned, what is important in recruiting and developing new leaders. So number one, what I learned is that we need to develop and communicate the vision which is relevant, attractive, and challenging. We need to develop and communicate, not just develop, but also communicate the vision which is relevant for those people, which is attractive, and which is challenging. It is important that we communicate the vision in a way that our people start to own it. And sometimes it doesn't mean that we need to be very loud in our vision, but we need to communicate in a way that people feel like, I want to be part of this. It is really important for me as well. It is not only important for that pastor or for that small group leader or for that youth group leader, but it is important also for me. How we do that, how I experience how we do that, it starts by giving reality. And it starts by giving reality how bad is reality where we are. And why we need actually this change, why we need actually this vision. It goes together with something I call it, and probably you are familiar with, is a holy discontent. I think Bill Hybel is someone who developed that. That you have this kind of, this holy unsatisfaction about what's going on in your city, in your country, or in your church. And you actually feed it, and you communicate that we can't stay here. It's so bad here, that's why we need to go there. And I remember when we in the Baptist Union were sharing this vision about 100 new churches. It started also with, we gave our churches and our pastors and our leaders and our church members, we gave the reality where we are. No leaders. There are many new places where families are living, no churches. Churches are declining, they are not missional anymore. They are not reaching out new people. And we are giving this reality that it's important that if we will not change, really churches will die in our nation. You give the reality, and then you start to give the vision. And to show why fulfill this vision is so important. And why you need them. Why you need other people to fulfill this vision. The vision which is relevant to them. That they feel it like, I want to be part of that. Vision which brings like excitement. Where people feel like, I really want to be part of that. And I remember when we were casting the vision about 100 new churches, there were some skeptical people who say we are crazy, but there were some people who say, you are crazy. But I like it. I like it. Finally, there's some brave leaders who are standing up and saying like it mean it, you know. And actually they joined that vision because there was excitement. And also it was the vision which brings hope. It brings hope for people. And that's why people want to be part of that. The vision, which is beautiful vision. It should be beautiful vision. It should be vision which brings hope for their people's lives, for your churches, for your cities, and for your country. So the vision is number one, that we develop the vision and we communicate the vision in a way that people want to be part of that. Secondly, we bring and keep around ourselves people who has potential to be leaders, and we give them opportunity. It's important that we are not doing things alone, but actually we are bringing around ourselves people who has this opportunity and potential to be a leader. And we give them that opportunity. I just want to share from my experience when I was studying a theological seminary. I was like 19 years old. And that time I was like from countryside boy, come to Riga, to big city, and I was looking for some churches where I could go. And I decided to go one of the churches, to the biggest Baptist church in Latvia, and I heard about great youth ministry there. And I thought, okay, let's go. And that time I didn't have a wife, so I decided it's a good place to maybe find your future wife maybe. But no, it was not the reason. I was going there to study the Bible and pray, of course. But that's what I was telling to others. But basically I was looking for community where I could be part of. And I remember I went to the first youth that meeting, and in that meeting the youth leader that time was Pēteris Sproģis, who is right now our bishop, who is the behind of this vision of planting 100 new churches. That time he was youth pastor in that church. But I remember when he recognized me, I knew about him, but I didn't know him personally. He knew about me as well, and he didn't know me personally. But after that youth service, he recognized me. Okay, there is this guy. I know that he's studying theological seminary. So after that we went, we ate like cookies and tea and all that stuff. And he comes to me and he say, Kaspars, this is the place where you can be part of and you can fulfill your ideas. So imagine, I'm like 19 years old. Of course, I have many ideas. Thanks God that I was not fulfilling those ideas. But it was so important that there was a leader who in some way I respected him already because I heard about him before that. He comes to me and he say, Kaspars, you can come here. You can fulfill your ideas. This is an open place for you. Just imagine for a young guy how it is to feel like that. I felt like, of course I want to be part of this. Of course I want to be part of this leadership team. And he gave me opportunity to start to lead. Leaders knows leaders. Lead yourself and you will learn to recognize leaders. If you are a great leader, you will recognize those leader potential and you will start to gather those people around yourself. Lead in a way that you attract other leaders. Lead in a way that you start to recognize there is a leadership potential around you. It means that you start to do things together with other people. You also open your life to people so that they can learn and inspire from you as a leader. That they don't see you as a leader only from position, from pulpit or from the stage, but they see you actually your life. That your life attracts them. And that's why they want to be like you. That's why they want to be as a leader like you are the leader. And when we look in the Gospels about Jesus, he was not doing ministry alone. He was bringing around him always some people. Do these people were perfect? Absolutely not. And I think Jesus was very oftenly thinking like, Father, why these guys? Please, not again this Peter. He doesn't understand anything, Just imagine he's trying to explain and explain and explain, and it doesn't help sometimes. But he was always doing things together. He was always bringing people around him. And he was also showing his life, showing his character, showing how he is serving, how he is doing ministry. The same we can see in the book of Acts. We see that Barnabas was one of the guys when he went to plant church in Antioch. So what he did, he took his new disciple Saul or Paul, and nobody wanted to deal with Paul because everybody was afraid from him. But Barnabas something saw in him, and he said, go together, let's go and plant church in Antioch. What happened after Antioch? When they start to go on the mission trip, they both, Barnabas and Paul, and they went and started to do a mission and plant churches there. What happened after they have a relationship crisis, Paul and Barnabas? We felt like, well, now that super team is gone. Barnabas goes do mission together with Mark, and Paul is doing with Silva, Luke, and then there's a Timothy. He's already looking for next guy because he believed that he will not do things alone. He needs to do things together. So we see in the Bible, leaders always attract leaders. If you are a leader, if you're a good leader, if you're a leader not just from position, but if you're a leader in your life, you will naturally attract leaders and those who has a potential to be a leaders. Another thing what we learn in our church planting is it's important what kind of people we reach through our ministries. Sometimes we feel challenging that, and of course I believe the gospel is needed for every people. And it's very necessary that we work with all kind of people. But sometimes what happens, that we develop the ministries which are more attractive I would say like people who are in a great needs. Sometimes those are people like with the social problems, economical problems. And it's a good thing to work and minister to those people. But sometimes we don't have those ministries where we can work with those people who are already in society, naturally leaders. And for instance, we had one church plant the planter who started to plant in really rough area, planted churches. And in the beginning, he could reach like many people. And many people start to come to his church. And he start to delegate them some things. He thought that these guys are ready also to be leaders. And suddenly he faced that you can't trust them because they are coming from that environment. You know, they start to disappoint you. They have a lot of character issues. And their intellectual level is maybe not so educated and high. And he started to face disappointment. Because usually with those people, we call it kind of problem people, it takes much longer time for them to develop them as a leaders. And still it could happen. But sometimes we don't forget that we also need to develop environment and ministry where those people who are influential in your community, who has this entrepreneurial kind of leadership potential in your community, that actually they could feel that they could be part of your ministry, that they could be part of your church plant. So we need to gather all kind of people around ourselves so we could recognize that leadership. Thirdly, invest in people who can be greater than you. Invest in people who can be greater than you. Sometimes some leaders are so obsessed about that position, what they have, that they are afraid that they will lose their leadership position. And I think for some of the leaders, that's really identity issue. That's where they find identity. If they will not hear that, after every teaching, somebody will, say positive things about him, and appreciate him, he feels like he's not valuable. And that's why some people are using in a wrong motivation, by wrong motivation, the leadership position. Like I know the one pastor in Latvia who once said that when we were talking about future leadership and we'd say probably in your church you would need some, new leader who can help you to lead. He say, yeah, everybody could come, but he will not take the pulpit. It's like, that's my place. But when I look deeper, why? Because it was a great platform for him actually to show that who he is, that people appreciate, that people notice him, that he could actually feed his identity. And I think for some leaders, it's really identity issue where we can go deeper. It's a gospel issue. That these leaders don't trust that they are fully accepted and loved by God. And that's why they need this leadership position, to be loved, to be accepted, to be approved. But good leaders are not afraid to invest in those and give opportunity to those who can be greater than you. When we look in the Bible, again, Jesus, imagine those words what Jesus was saying. He said, you will do greater things than I did. Of course, some say, well, come on. Who can do greater things than Jesus? Who can be greater than Jesus? Of course, nobody. But with that, Jesus tells that I had limits in time, in geography, and probably in a ministry as well. But you will go much farther. You will do much greater things. You will reach much more people than I did. And we see that Jesus is very peaceful by saying that. He's not afraid. He's not like protecting his identity. He's very peaceful by saying that and giving authority to the guys who will be much greater and stronger and will do much greater things than Jesus did. Another example again is Barnabas. Barnabas was somebody who saw some potential in Paul. When I say that some of those people were even afraid from Paul. And Barnabas saw something in him. And what we see in the book of Acts, okay, we see how Barnabas was doing ministry together with Paul. But after Antioch, we see that actually look how he's describing. He's describing that Paul is doing things together with Barnabas. And actually today we don't read the letter of Barnabas. We reread the letter of Paul. We read a lot about Paul. And Barnabas was not afraid of that. That actually he will invest in somebody who will be greater and do greater things than he is doing. And that's why it's important that we are studying and we are discovering that there are different type of leaders, that there are different type of personalities. It means that naturally we like to attract very similar people to us. We like to be together who has the same jokes, who kind of see the things the same way that we see the same way. But we need to realize that there are different personalities. There are introvert, extrovert. There are people who has different talents. And there are different leadership styles. Don't expect everyone to lead in the same way. And don't be afraid to invest in people who are different than you. And look for your people around you. Maybe they have different rhythm of life. Maybe they are doing differently how they are managing, organizing things, or how they are communicating things. Maybe they are not so loud on the stage, but maybe they are very influential. We are sitting together with others. So look for those different. Another thing is it's important that we are delegating not tasks, but we are delegating authority. Not task, but authority. I remember when I was starting youth ministry in that Baptist church, and my pastor, Petris, that time, he asked me to start new ministry, sports ministry. In that time in Latvia, it was absolutely new thing. Nobody knew about that, and I even didn't know about that. What is sports ministry? What these guys are doing there? But our goal was basically reach out non-Christian guys through the sports ministry. But I remember how my pastor delegate that. He doesn't say, okay, you need now do these things. No, he say, Kaspar, I want you to develop this ministry. There are some limited resources. I fully trust you. I support you. I give you opportunity. And it was not like every week I needed to report him and he's following me, checking me. No, he was not controlling me. Same time, I felt I was really highly supported. Anytime I had a question, I could go to him and talk to him. Anytime I have some challenges or when I want to share some good things, I can go and talk to him. He can ask me some questions, but I never felt that he's controlling me. He was giving me, delegating me, not just tasks, but delegating authority. And that's what we need as a leaders. If you want to see new potential leaders, we need not just delegate projects, go do that, fulfill that. But we also need not to be afraid to delegate ministry, to delegate maybe some bigger project, to delegate authority. How I delegate authority, and something probably you are aware of, but this really helps me. What I do, how I delegate, I say I do, and then I have somebody with me who is helping me. That's the first stage. I do, and he helps me or he observes. The next level is I do, and he starts to help me more. Before that, he was more like supportive and observer, but now he helps me. Thirdly, he starts to do, and I help him. And the fourth is he do, and I just support him. I just observe. And that's probably because some of the guys are not ready that you just give them right away authority. But these are some steps how you can, through that, start to discover if this guy has a leadership potential. If this guy can really make things happen without your help, without your control. Next one. Create the culture where it is allowed to make mistakes. Create the culture where it is allowed to make mistakes. Again, I want to share my experience. I remember in my first church, I had this old pastor, and he invited me to first time to preach in one of New Year Eve service. And that time I was 16-year-old, and I really tried hard to prepare. I was very scared. And then there was a service after the songs. The pastor said, "Okay, Kaspars, now we invite you to come and preach and share the message." And you know what I did? I sit down, I say, "No, I will not go." That was my reaction. I was so scared, afraid, that I was sitting down and my mom was sitting with me and saying, go, you prepared, come on, what's going on? And I was saying, "No, I will not go." And I was sitting. And just imagine for you who are leading sometimes worship, or there's a guy you trust on him, you count on him, and he say, "Well, I feel like I don't want to go." And that pastor, took the Bible and he asked Holy Spirit to help him to preach. But I still remember that moment. But what I remember more, after that, even though I failed, a pastor came to me. He said, "What about next week? We will do small Bible study. Maybe then you can share your testimony." He still gave me opportunity. And of course, again, I prepared. I prepared not testimony. I prepared 3-point sermon about some kind of hard theological issue. I thought I'm very smart. So in that Bible study, it was smaller environment, more safe for me. My mouth was, of course, dry. But so I shared that message. So after that, my pastor came to me and he said, "Well, thank you for your courage but actually I asked you just a testimony, not 3-point sermon." But still he gave me opportunity. And I think that's, we need to create this environment where it is allowed to make mistakes. Because if there will not be this environment where you can allow people to make mistakes, sooner or later, that ministry will die. Because if you make mistakes, if you are not making mistakes, you are not pushing to developing anything new. You are staying in comfort zone. If you want to protect, be everything perfect, clear, and if we are not developing that environment where it's okay if people do mistakes, we don't push people out of comfort zone, and sooner or later that thing will die. There's saying that the biggest danger is not to make mistake. The biggest evil is not doing mistake, but not to grow. For some people, if somebody makes mistake, it's like the biggest hell for them. But the biggest problem is when we don't allow people to grow. Another saying is that happiness is not to be great, but to grow. Happiness is not to be great, but to grow. And I want just to share a story from one of my youth camps where we train our future leaders, how we actually developing and how we allow them to do mistakes, and through that they could grow actually through those mistakes. And we have one of those camps where basically some of potential future leaders who are still teenagers, 15, 16-year-old, they are coming with their teams and we are doing mission. But what is interesting in that context, that they are doing mission like we give them budget, we give them place where they can do ministry, And we give them like some 5 key contacts in that local community. And then we are, as leaders only, we are only mentors. And we say, guys, this is your opportunity. This is your team. Go and do whatever you want. If you want, go to McDonald's. If you want, you can rest and relax and so on. But of course, these guys start to come with all kind of ideas. What actually they can do to actually do a ministry in the town. So there was one story. There was in one of those places where we did camp. Those teams came up with a great idea. That they're going to do in a local town, they're going to do sport activities to reach out young people. There will be one special day. So of course they prepared everything, they put posters in the town and put the program. But they did one mistake. They didn't coordinate with a local leader who is responsible for those fields and sport area. And that guy, he knew that we are doing some kind of things there and who we are there. So he calls to one of our leaders and say, guys, what's going on? You are organizing some event which is not approved. So tomorrow, 9 o'clock in my office. So we as a mentors, we say, guys, this is not our problem. You did that, you know. This is your problem. And you now need to fix this problem. You need to be at 9 o'clock in the office and explain why you did what you did. We gave them some suggestions how they need to talk, what they need to say. Basically, we say, don't say anything. Just listen. And problem will be solved by itself. That was our learning point. Because that gentleman, that leader, he's like very old man and, you know, very strict and, you know, feels like he owns the town. So, next morning, we went together with those young leaders. We sit in that office, but we didn't talk. We allowed them to deal with that problem. And really, they listened to our suggestion. Basically, they sit quiet. Okay, they apologized, like 20 times apologized. And then this old man say, please, okay, now it's enough is your apologize. But basically what was interesting that how they start to communicate and learn throughout this mistake, that actually some good things start to happen. And suddenly this old leader, he say, well, what help you need? Okay, what else you need? How I can help you that you can organize great this event? Next morning, he even took a lot of like 2 or 3 plastic bags with food for these guys. And say, guys, you need to eat something, so this is for you. And for teenager boys, food is almost like gospel. So, and you see, we in some way we develop, and sometimes that's what we do. Sometimes in those camps we develop like controlled environment where they can, where the mistakes are allowed. But the same should be in our ministries. We should show that you can make mistake, but through those mistakes you can grow. Another thing is that what is important for leadership development, what I learned is create environment where you can give feedback. Create environment where you can give feedback. Regular feedback is very necessary if we want to develop great leaders. Again, I remember in my ministry, when I was start work in a Matthew church, after every time I was preaching, my pastor, he took me to the office, and actually we went through the sermon, and he gave me really good feedback. He was not like, even though sometimes I was really preaching not very good, he was not like saying, brother, this sermon you can actually throw in the garbage. No, he was out of every bad thing, he was really seeing some good positive things. And I saw that in a way how he gave me this feedback, it was in a very positive way. It was in a very positive way. Yes, he gave me this, maybe you are aware of hamburger principle, you know. It's like when you give somebody feedback, it's important that you give something positive. Then the meat part is where it's not negative, but these are the things you need to improve, which are the most important things, because that's the part which helps you to grow. And then in the end of conversation, it's always end with something positive. If you don't even have anything to say, you just say, "You are a cool guy. Actually, Jesus loves you still." Something like that. Of course, it should be honest, yeah. But he gave me that hamburger principle. And you know how I felt after that conversation? I didn't feel like, I'm so bad preacher. I felt like he still loves me. And yeah, I know what I need to improve, but he gave me in such a way that I actually want to improve that. That actually I want to be better leader, because I want to preach better, because in a way, how he told me that. You know, we can see leadership potential in a moments how people receive feedback. If he, like the leader or potential leader, is ready to learn, if he accepts, if he changes, you see there is a leadership potential. If there is somebody who negatively receives feedback, I guarantee he will be pain in the butt. It's very important when you give feedback, how those people react to this feedback. If they start to protect his identity or, his position, it's already a threat that he will not be a good leader. Also, in a situation of crisis, see if the leader, if the person is blaming others or he's taking responsibility. Again, that shows if he's a leader or he's just somebody who blames others. Sometimes that's why, you can create in your group sometimes, some exercise where some things suddenly go wrong. And then you can start to discuss about problems. Okay, what went wrong? Why went wrong? Leaders will start to talk about what they could do better. Losers will talk about what others did wrong. And that's in those situations, in those conversations, you realize who has the potential to be leader. If he starts to blame others, sorry, I will call them not very successful leaders or losers. But if he is a leader, he will see, okay, how I can take responsibility to that, what I can do better to change, to do better things next time. Another thing is where the feedback is very important. It's a character. And I strongly believe, and I think you agree, all of you, that character is more important than talents. There could be very talented people, but you can mess all that talent if you don't have right character. And that's why character is something which makes things last long. Somebody has once said that the talent can get you there, but the character will keep you there. With a good talent, you can go far, but if you want to stay there, you need to have good character. And that's why feedback in those character development is very important. Because about character, you can't learn in the school, in the class. About character, you can learn from somebody who is showing example. And character you can develop when you open your life to others. And they can actually give honest feedback, healthy hamburger feedback to your personality, to what you do, to your character. That's why in our Baptist Union we developed these different kind of structures where we realize that we don't need just the talented leaders, but we need with good character leaders. Like our training school. That's why our training school first year is a full time. Why? It's not just because we want to give a lot of content to them. Content you can get today online as well. You can go to conferences, you can read the books, you can watch the videos on YouTube. But when you are daily with those guys, with those leaders, you start to recognize what are their strengths and what are their struggles, how they communicate to each other, how they deal with things where they are stressed, how they deal with things when they are tired. You start to recognize what are their character issues. We also developed a mentoring program, which is really important part. Another thing we develop is something you probably know. It's a 360-degree evaluation, where basically you get report from the people who are around this leader, who are actually giving their observations and report about this leader. Because sometimes when we invest in somebody, we not always we know about everything about him. And that's we need to develop some structures in your ministry where you can see how he lives his life in reality, not just talks about that. And at the end, we need to develop leadership pipeline. We need to develop leadership pipeline. So what I mean by that, it means that we need leaders in a different levels. If we want to see, like for instance in Latvia, if we want to see 100 new churches to be planted, we definitely need strong leaders who are multiplying new leaders. By doing that, we understand that we need to find a way how we train those leaders. By doing that, we understand that we need probably develop internship for those leaders where they can practice slowly to become leaders. We also develop the school for the leaders. We also develop, now we call it those leadership, youth leadership camps, we call it draft camps, where we actually, while they are teenager boys, we are investing in them, in the thinking in the future. And it is important that in each of those levels, what you have, and in your ministry, in your church plant, it could be like DNA groups, small groups. It could be like ministries, and then it could be like bigger unit like church or hub or something like that. And it's important that each of this level is, there's somebody who is responsible. And that you as a leader understand that each of these levels are very important for you. That for you it's not just a Sunday gathering and big church is important for you, but for you it's also like each of those pipeline positions and levels are very important for you. And you have somebody who is responsible for each of those levels. Also, it is important that in each of those levels you cast the vision. The people about your church vision, why you are doing what you are doing, what you want to achieve, that in each of those levels, people own the vision. That they understand how this part, this level, actually is very important to your bigger vision. Also, in each of those levels, you allow people to make mistakes. You don't expect like those perfect people who will do everything perfectly. You allow them, but you also know how to deal with those mistakes. And that's why you give good feedback. That people feel it like you really take care of them. And yet through that, you see who is ready to go to the next level. Who is ready to go to the next level and who is ready to go to the next level. That's why each of us, in each ministry, in each church plant, in each organization, we need to develop healthy leadership pipeline. And also, lastly, it is important, and it all goes together, we need to bring young people in our leadership. It's really important that we are thinking in the long term. And we really need to bring in our teams, in our ministries, in our leadership teams, we need to bring young people, young generation. And it means that we need to treat them seriously. We need to communicate with them in a way that we just don't treat them just as a small kids, but that actually we actually we mean it when we talk to them, that they are really necessary for us, that actually they are needed for us in our ministry, that there is already potential what they can do. And that's why in our case in a Baptist Union, that's why we developed these draft camps where we realize that if we want to fulfill this vision to plant 100 new churches, it's not enough with my generation. I need to recruit those who are 15, 16, 14, so that one day they can continue to fulfill this vision. And they can continue to lead with the same excitement like we are doing now. We need those young leaders, this young generation. That's why in one of those camps where we bring our bishop, who is the head of Baptist Union, he actually talks to these young teenager boys. And he says, guys, this is your denomination. This is your church. This is your country. God wants you to use already in a ministry. And sometimes, let's be honest, how we react to our teenagers. Not always we are very happy with them. And sometimes we are like, just take your iPhone and just play, and be quiet. And sometimes we say, well, you can't do anything because you're too young, you're too immature. You maybe only what you can go, you can, help put speakers and set the tables, and that's it. And sometimes we don't take them very seriously. But imagine, in Eastern world, those teenager boys are already holding guns in their ages and ready to fight for their religion, for their country. What we do in the Western world, we entertain them with cookies and coffee or snacks or Coke or chips. And that's all what we do. We don't give enough challenge to them. And I know it's not easy. It's not easy for us as well. But we want to challenge every church planter in Latvia that you actually have somebody younger than you, next generation, who can actually go alongside with you, that you already delegate authority to him, give him opportunity, allow him to make mistakes, and help him to start to lead. Build his character. Because, guys, to build character when you are 40, it's really hard, sometimes impossible. But develop character when you are 15, it's still much easier to change and develop character when you are young. So this is my experience in a ministry, and everything starts with leaders. Everything starts with leaders. Do we have those people around us? Do we believe in them? Do we have enough attractive vision so that they want to be part of that? Is it only your vision, or your people in your church also own it? Look for those people who start to own it, who say, I want to belong to this vision. Do we delegate authority? Do we gather people around us? Are we not afraid that there will be somebody who can be greater than us one day, who can do better things than us, who can reach more people than us, who can preach better than us, who can sing better than us? Are we not afraid of that? And let's develop leadership pipeline, where we can put in this pipeline next generation, our young people who can one day say, I will continue what you've been starting. God bless you. Amen.